Rachel Zegler is back in the news doing press for her starring role in Evita. She is showing this in a revival play in London. And of course, all of the interviews related to this new project are harkening back to the Snow White Backlash era of her career, which wasn't that long ago. But she wants to.
I thought that was still going on, actually.
I mean, I've noticed it slowing down, but they're doing everything they can to revive this discourse over and over and over again. This time, in an interview with ID magazine, Rachel Zegler revealed that the Snow White backlash got so devastating for her that she had to turn to therapy and psychiatric medication to cope with how difficult this was. She is in this article posing for ID. The headline of it says, Rachel Zegler, theater kid, based princess.
Remember when I told you a long time ago that word means nothing anymore and both sides use it
they've adopted
interchangeably?
it themselves.
So everybody just uses the word based. It doesn't matter anymore.
After breaking records on Broadway, the 24-year-old actor is playing her dream part on London's West End. No amount of bullying or scandal can change that. She's also quoted in this article saying, I'm a theater kid that got everything she wanted. Nothing more needs to be said. But then, shortly into the interview, they address Snow White. Zegler's journey with Snow White was never easy, despite the fact that she's proud of it. Shakiness of the film's narrative aside, she is great and commanding as its titular princess, through which she became the subject of internet schadenfreude. Every lip curl, paparazzi photo, and pull, quote, torn apart. She is, in some ways, a living example of the sensationalist power of tabloid media, where facts are bent and sources say whatever, knowing there's little chance of them having to deal with the consequences. A prominent Variety article spun things out so publicly that a petition was created to defend Rachel Zegler against online hate. And I think that they are referring to the one written by Tatiana Siegel shortly after the release of the movie this year, where they were mostly focusing on her social media posts about Palestine, including on the same day of the trailer release saying Free Palestine underneath it. However, they conveniently ignored all of the starting points for controversy around Rachel Zegler having to do with her comments about Snow White itself. The PR drama imploded when she posted, "Always remember Free Palestine," the same day of the Snow White trailer drop. Zegler's post supposedly sent reps at Disney into such a spiral that, according to Variety, the film's producer, Mark Platt, flew from LA to New York to ask her to delete it. And Platt's 38-year-old son, Jonah, corroborated this story online.
He flew to ask her to delete it. That's crazy.
That you would even need to be face-to-face with her to bully her into deleting that post instead of just making that demand, which you have the full right to do as her employer. Whether that conversation happened or not, Rachel Zegler's message remains on the platform, and it was the last thing she posted on X. She doesn't use it anymore, so that's her final message on that platform. She's someone who harbors the political stance of a generation that doesn't buy into the gleaming and digestible image of Disney princesses. Well, maybe that's a sign that she shouldn't have been one. She's maybe the most based princess in the House of Mouse. She was scolded after posting F Donald Trump in the wake of last year's election results on Instagram and apologized for it. That is not what she apologized for. She was apologizing for the part of the post they conveniently left out where she said, F the Trump supporters, and I hope you never know peace. Of course, they're not going to mention that in this flattering puff piece. It's interesting, she says. It's really alarming at times when asked about the opinions formed about her online. She's one of the few actors in Hollywood who was willing to ask questions about how we were collectively responding to the atrocities in Gaza, and asked herself what really mattered. I didn't see her asking any questions. She was just making a bunch of statements because she thinks she knows everything.
Well, everybody thinks that it's time to start a discussion.
A platform becomes a responsibility, and that responsibility is ours to use as we please, she says. If she's been a punchy conversationalist so far, her tone is now direct. My compassion has no boundaries, is really what it is, and my support for one cause does not denounce any others. That's always been at the core of who I am as a person. It's the way I was raised. They ask her if she was ever worried about the consequences of being politically outspoken, and she said, there are obviously things that are at stake by being outspoken, but nothing is worth innocent lives. My heart doesn't have a fence around it, and if that is considered my downfall, she shrugs, so be it.
So be it.
Well,
there are worse things.
You know, there's a self-righteousness in that tone, and the internet has made it so that you have to be concerned about things thousands upon thousands of miles away that don't actually concern you.
Okay, they're just still obfuscating, though. That's what really annoys me. It was never about her statements on Palestine. I think actually the people within her own industry were more bothered by that. The audience didn't give a fuck. They didn't care about her disagreeing with Gal Gadot about Israel and Palestine. That was never the focus. The focus was always on her statements about Snow White itself, about the story, and demeaning it, saying that it's outdated, that she was scared of it, that she wants it to have a modern reimagination. That was the start, the origin, and the meaning of all the controversy surrounding her. None of it had to do with her statements about Palestine ever. And if it had just boiled down to that, no one would have had any problem with her whatsoever.
And it did come to, like you said, the other part that they obfuscate is that it had to do with her comments about Trump voters, not necessarily Trump himself. As
Yes.
every celebrity hates Trump, and people have long since accepted that that's just the way
Yes.
it's going to be. You roll your eyes and you move on.
But again, they are conveniently ignoring that. Rachel was pinned with the blame for Snow White's commercial failure, despite the production's creative issues and its lukewarm reviews.
I love that they're blaming her when the whole thing was like an S show from like Inception, and they're like, oh, it's the loudmouth's fault.
Thank you. Standing on business at the beach.
Phil likes this one more.
Is that just at the beach? At the beach?
It's Justin Bieber yelling at the paparazzi.
Okay.
That he's
Good.
standing on business.
Yeah.
At the beach.
At the beach. So, yeah, they're placing the blame from the framework of this article
Thank
on
God.
Disney rather than her. They're saying it's unfair that she was blamed. And I think partially that is true. They scripted it terribly. It would have been terrible regardless of the actress they chose,
Yes.
but she wasn't doing it any favors. Her thoughts on the original Snow White, made nearly 100 years ago, which highlighted how its now shaky gender politics were being reimagined for a new generation, became additional fodder for trolls to call her ungrateful for the part. So
No, that was the original fodder. It was the real fodder.
yeah, they're acting like that was something added as a cherry on top of her controversy, when in reality that's where it started in 2022, which is ancient history in internet years. That was where it all began, but none of the journalists want to recognize that because they would rather make it about race, and they would rather make it about Palestine and Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was also a young woman of Colombian descent, playing a part that right-wing pundits felt was destined for a white woman. The combination of online vitriol and watching a dream role turn into a nightmare affected her deeply.
Well, it was Snow White, you know.
It was a role destined for a white woman,
Yes.
but that also was never the focal point of the controversy. And it's not something I would even say doesn't warrant criticism. Like, it just wasn't the majority of it.
Because most people that aren't like hyper online are like me, who are just like, yeah, I don't know. Like, as long as they're not annoying, I guess I don't care.
And you need only look to the previous example of the live-action Little Mermaid movie to see that race was not the focal point of the controversy, because Halle Bailey was not a victim to racist bullying at all. She's just not an annoying person who was making it a focus. She never spoke to it. She said only positive things about the movie, and yeah, it sucked. And yeah, it sucked that they chose a race swap. But she was not blamed for it because she didn't make herself the activist. Then they say when shit really hit the fan, Rachel Zegler left New York to go home to New Jersey, spending time with her family and her dog. Quote, "My effing psychiatrist has been seeing me through all of it. she needed to remind me that what we're going through isn't normal. That sentence did such wonders for me in multiple situations in my life. She got medicated for anxiety too, which was truly a game changer, as she puts it, because I just wasn't functioning. And I wanted to function in a way that made me feel confident in the way I was moving through the world. So I guess SSRIs were the only way. At the end of the day, soon she was able to rationalize things that previously felt big and insurmountable. There's a framing online of Zegler as a self-defined victim. Quote, I think a victim mindset is a choice, and I don't choose it. I also don't choose nastiness in the face of it. I don't choose negativity in the face of it. I choose positivity and light and happiness.
There's
Mrs. F. Donald Trump and his supporters.
Yeah, there's
choosing positivity and light.
There's a level of absolute gall to be able to say that with a straight face.
I mean, she has the gall to completely act oblivious to how she's conducted herself.
That's a huge part of Hollywood leftism, is like being evil to people, being mean to people online, but since you believe it's for a good cause, you're a good person.
Choosing positivity.
Like I had a friend who I've had people bring up, they're like they think that this show that we do is a net negative for society because you're putting negative energy out into the world. And I said, have you ever been on Facebook? Like, unless you're going to tell me that the average everyday Facebook conversation between a boomer and somebody isn't just as negative as everything else, at least here we're kind of working our way through entire sets of ideas and giving thoughts in a way that I would like to believe most of the time is pretty fair. Like we said, like for her, I think that the article is going overboard to obfuscate what the problem is. I will give her credit for something, however, though. So, a 405% bump in views on Disney Plus over PVOD. And I noticed that this article frames it as basically people were willing to watch it. They just weren't willing to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
But still, it did numbers on Disney Plus, right?
Sure,
Once
it was readily available.
Once it was readily available. But the point is that they love to frame everything as, because they believe it's a good, what they believe what they're sharing with the world is a good thing, that they can be as nasty as they want to somebody else because it's for a good cause.
So there's this quote by Aldous Huxley that says, there is nothing that humans love more than to be able to destroy with good conscience. To be able to behave badly and call your bad behavior righteous indignation. This is the height of psychological luxury. It is the most delicious of moral treats. People love to hurt other people when they believe they are doing it for good and moral reasons. And that's a big part of the reason why the left does all the cancel culture and has no problem, swatting people or trying to get people hurt when they disagree, because they believe deep inside that if you disagree with them, it is because you are immoral and you have some kind of inherent badness to you. So it's acceptable to not just treat you badly, but to do everything they can to harm you, even, and in extreme cases, up to and including, murder and stuff like that.
This was something I brought up yesterday, because there was a baseball player who was on the field when his mother died tragically, like 5 years prior, and a fan heckled him and said awful stuff about his mom.
Yep.
And he was on the field crying because he missed his mom, and it was sad. And every one of the comments was like, we need this dude's banning him from the field isn't enough. We need to figure out who he is so that he can. So we need to destroy this dude's life, because they felt that they have a morally justifiable reason to be awful and ruin a person's life. And there's nothing more enticing to a certain subset of person, because they feel so morally inclined to do so.
Yep.
And it's not just along the lines of political affiliation either.
No, this was
you can
baseball.
See that in politically neutral environments like baseball. You can see it happen on the right as well. There's just as much purity spiraling.
Well, look what happened when Kyle Rittenhouse was like, yeah, I'm not going to vote for Trump. And then they're like, this is the end of your life as you know it.
Hellfire they rained down on him for that. It was definitely educational to watch that happen. And it's true. It's just a universal fact of the vices that we're drawn to.
Human beings love to hurt people they believe are not or are immoral.
Yeah. She also finished by saying, I believe at times happiness is absolutely a choice, and every day I wake up, and I think I'm very lucky to live the life I live. So, maybe if you're an optimist, you'll believe that Rachel Zegler has shifted her attitude over this learning experience of Snow White. And if you're like me, you believe it's all a front.
There you go.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.